What's up everybody, Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video, and in this video we're going to be breaking down the 1.12 weapons tier list, because there's a lot of guns that have been changing in tier about how effective they are based on pro play. So we're going to break it all down so that you know exactly what weapons are top tier and what weapons are trash tier. But the Game Leap website is the one place. If you want to master any weapon, any character, or if you just want to improve your aim and easily climb, then go check it out in the links down below. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now, kicking it off with the SSS tier, we got to talk about the best weapon in the game, and that's none other than the Prime Vandal, because Valorant's pay to win, baby. And for those of you who bought the Prime Vandal, I'm sure you're already clicking all the heads up in Radiant. But for the rest of you who didn't buy the Prime Vandal or bought a stupid skin like Glitch Pop that doesn't give you a competitive advantage, let's move on to the S tier of the weapons that are going to help you dominate your ranked games. Now, for transparency's sake, the top of the S tier are going to be the Phantom and the Vandal, and a lot of people are going to ask, and a lot of people still ask, what is the better weapon? Because we've done guides about Vandal on this channel, guides about Phantom, but a lot of people are still really stuck deciding on which one of these weapons they should be choosing, and sometimes they just feel that the Vandal is extremely good and they get shut down when they're rocking Phantom, but they see pros everywhere rock the Phantom, so they just don't know, and I'm gonna tell you definitively what weapon you should be using. Now, right off the bat, the thing that you need to understand is that in pro play and in a competitive environment, Phantom is just seeing more play because of the power level that it brings to so many different aspects of the game of Valorant. Now, yes, Vandal in a straight up 1v1. If the game was just 1v1 duels, the Vandal would be better. It can one-shot from further ranges. It's really easy to tap fire, get that one shot, and secure that kill, especially if you have the mechanical skill and the crosshair placement to back that up, which everyone at a certain level automatically does. Now, that being said, however, just because it's better in 1v1 duels does not make it the better weapon, because a lot of Valorant is not 1v1 duels. A lot of Valorant is spraying through smokes, turning on flashes, being able to swing out on people instead of holding an angle, being able to refrag someone, or being able to convert your spray from one target to the next and still control that recoil. You see, in all those other scenarios, whether it's the 1v2 clutch, fighting people on point with abilities and through smokes and things like that, the Vandal succeeds every single time, and it's far more consistent as a refrag weapon instead of something like the Vandal, which is really feast or famine, which is a term that we use a lot on this channel, which means you either pop off and get that kill, or you don't get that kill at all, you just get shut down, and it doesn't really matter what your teammates did or how much damage they put on the table, you are counting on that headshot. Now, that doesn't mean that the Vandal is bad by any means. Like I said, it's the best 1v1 weapon that you could possibly have, and if you want to climb in ranked, there's gonna be a lot of scenarios where the Vandal is gonna be really good for you if you have that mechanical skill to back it up. There are certain challenges that you can only take on the Vandal, and you will most likely be able to carry if you pull out ahead. Think about something like Ascent. Challenging from Tiles to Cat is a very common duel, and the side that can win that can often get that numbers advantage and maybe even win the game, especially at lower ranks. And taking that challenge with the Phantom up against a Vandal is probably just going to be terrible. But if you're having a team that isn't very synergistic together, y'all don't go in, use your abilities together, if you can at least win this matchup and use the Vandal to do so, you're going to give yourself a lot better chance to challenge that and win the game as a result than rocking something like a Phantom. But like I said, for all those things besides taking true 1v1s, especially from those closer ranges, the Phantom is just going to be better. So you got to ask yourself, what engagements are you going to get into? What are the skill sets of your team, and how are y'all fighting these fights? And do you need the skill set or the ability of a Phantom over a Vandal? And that is the best way to decide which weapon you should be using, and it should be different from game to game. It shouldn't just be something that you just always rock one, because sometimes there's going to be times when the Vandal's better or the Phantom, and that's the big takeaway for you. Now, moving on to the next two weapons in the S tier. These are pretty simple. It's the Ghost and the Classic. Now, the Ghost is just a weapon that is systematically used all the time in that first pistol round. Now, it's not used that much outside of that, besides just having it from previous rounds. But the Ghost is extremely powerful on those pistol rounds, because unless the enemy buys armor, you're going to be able to one-shot headshot them, and it's a pretty far-range weapon. However, the thing that you should be conscious of with the Ghost is more and more frenzy armor strategies are becoming used. So in some scenarios, a frenzy user is going to rush you down, you're going to hit that headshot, and they're not going to die, and you got to identify that you gooshed an enemy and instantly keep spraying towards their body. You can even crouch if you have to. Anything you need to do to just finish off that person with a body shot. Then we'll go to the A tier. These are weapons that define the meta, or they create opportunities in certain force rounds or save rounds that can really flip an entire game on its head. And the first weapon in the A tier is the Stinger, which is seeing more and more playtime. And honestly, this is the weapon that I just completely misevaluated from the beginning of the game. Stinger is so strong for force buy rounds, simply because when you're rushing down enemies, your time to kill is as fast as it possibly can be without hitting headshots at close range. Now, yes, ARs and things like that and shotguns can one-shot, but the Stinger is the fastest outside of that, and when you're moving rapidly, these other guns have a very hard time bursting you down or hitting that headshot, while you are still decently accurate as long as you're from those closer ranges. Now, on top of that, the beauty of the Stinger is it actually scales well because of all the stuff I listed. Unlike a weapon like a Spectre, who has been dropping down this list, by the way, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, the Stinger can still fight the even better guns like ARs as long as you try to play in your effective range, unlike something like a Spectre, who is just going to lose on any axis when up against an AR. Whether you're close or further away, it's just going to always be losing, and that's what a Stinger can do that a Spectre can't. And that's why in a lot of force buy rounds, a lot of teams are forcing to the Stinger when they force buy, and then they're bonusing with the Stinger because it can still trade out even up against those better weapons. So definitely don't sleep on this weapon. It is pretty much a free kill. Just rush some person down with armor and you're going to get a free kill, and a lot of times you're going to be able to trade out, upgrade your weapon for free. It's really, really nuts. Now, the next weapon that we got to talk about on the A tier is the Sheriff, which is a weapon that just has that capability, that X factor to carry games. And this is the #1 weapon that I suggest people practice, especially in something like free-for-all, because this is the weapon that can convert to some of those rounds that you really just had no business winning. All of a sudden, you get one single kill. You get that numbers advantage. You get someone on your team that AR, and now you might win a round that your entire team was saving, and you really should not have won this round on paper, and it just completely messes up the enemy eco. It could snowball to multiple rounds in your favor. But the big tip that I got for you on the Sheriff is make sure that you're patient and just hold a lot of these angles that enemies like to peek from, and just keep your crosshair placement on point. Enemies are going to peek these angles. You're going to be able to shut them down with the Sheriff. A lot of people are swinging around angles far too much on the Sheriff, and while that can work out for you if you have a lot of practice, you do got to remember that there's a pretty big margin for error, and if you're swinging around, someone has full auto, it's going to be a lot easier for them to kill you because they don't have to hit headshots in order to win that, but your time to kill is super, super slow unless you hit headshots, but they could crouch, they could stand, they could move. It is just very, very difficult for you to win that matchup if this is the type of axis you take the duel on. Now, moving on to the next weapon that we got for you in the A tier, it's the Shorty, and the Shorty is just a fantastic weapon. We've went over this many times in the channel where if you're specifically on defense and you're holding some close angles, the Shorty can just get some free value. Now, it's not as powerful as it used to be when enemies weren't as expecting it in pro play. However, in ranked play, the Shorty is as strong as ever, and maybe even stronger, because a lot of players are going to do things like paranoia you or rain a flash and push in, and as long as you push up close enough to that angle, doesn't matter, you can see them anyways, you just shorty them in the face, get that free kill. Even better on a character that can get out like Reyna or Jett. Really, really powerful, really, really strong, 200 credits, you can't go wrong with that. Now, the last weapon that we got for you in the A tier is the Operator, and a lot of people ask, is the Operator still viable? And yeah, I'm telling you, a sniper rifle that can hold an angle and one-shot body shot is going to be extremely powerful no matter how much it costs, because enemies that are not disciplined enough to force you out, if you're constantly playing different angles and you don't miss that shot, which is honestly not very difficult to execute, you're gonna get that free kill, you back up, reposition, don't get greedy, don't go for more, and don't let enemies trade out with you. That is the most important part. But if you do all these things, then you're pretty much setting yourself up to succeed, and there's so many maps like Ascent, like Haven, where opping is very, very strong. So definitely, definitely don't sleep on the Operator just because it's a little bit more expensive, and it got nerfed a little bit because it's still such a powerful weapon. Then we go to the B tier. These are just weapons that are still really good in the right scenarios, but they aren't as meta-defining as the A tier weapons. Now, at the top of the B tier is the Bulldog, which is a weapon that is just seeing a lot more play because players are actually full forcing after they win that first pistol round. A lot of teams are full forcing up to that Bulldog because the first reason is when the enemies force buy, which is happening a lot more, They want a weapon like the Bulldog that can outrange the lethality of a Stinger, and a Spectre can't really do that. You still want to take those closer duels with the Spectre, and sometimes you even lose Spectre up against Stinger when the Stinger ADSs, so they're really going to that Bulldog for that extra lethality and range. Plus, the Bulldog, just like with the Stinger, scales better up against ARs in that bonus round. When that third round, after you win that second round and secure it in the bag, you want to make sure that you could still buy even if you lose that third round. Bulldogs can still clutch up against better weapons, and they can still fight from those longer distances, unlike things like the Spectre, which, speaking of the Spectre, is the next weapon on our B tier. Still a solid weapon, still decent, and still going to annihilate most weapons that are underneath its price point besides that Stinger, and up against teams that are saving, and the fact that it's silenced. I mean, there's a lot to love about it, but just showing how far it's fallen from all the way to the top of A tier to mid B tier, you can see that the Spectre really isn't as consistent, as reliable, and it doesn't scale as well as some of these other weapons. So I wouldn't fault you for picking the Spectre less and less. I know a lot of pro players in ranked play, at the very least, are not using this gun that much at all. Now, the next weapon that we got for you in the B tier is the Judge, which is the weapon that I'm still surprised they haven't nerfed, but I'm not complaining. I'm gonna keep abusing this weapon, and so should you. Judges are just one of those weapons that if enemies don't clear you out, they don't respect you, you hold in the smoke, they don't spray it out, you hold around a corner, they don't flash you out or AoE you out or whatever the case may be, you're gonna end up with a 2k, 3k, 4k, and you're gonna win a round that you really shouldn't have won. You're gonna win a round when the enemy might had 3, 4, 5 ARs. You're still gonna win that round even if you force to judge. Now, the most important thing about the Judge, though, is the element of surprise, and as such, you can never let the enemy know you have a Judge until they're already looking at their death screen. This is really important. If enemies send something like a boom bot in, or a flash, or whatever, do not shoot it with your Judge. Shoot it with your classic if you have to, because if you shoot it with your Judge, enemies will never ever push into you. They might even rotate off the site altogether, so do not show them that you have a Judge at all costs until you're shooting them in the face with it. Now, the next weapon we gotta talk about in the B tier is the Frenzy, which, like I said before, is being used a lot more, where players are either buying the Frenzy and utility, or they're buying the Frenzy and buying their armor. And the thing is, if you are not feeling that confident with your abilities, or maybe you're playing a character that's abilities are better on defense than attack, if you just rock armor and a Frenzy, you're almost guaranteed to get value. You're almost guaranteed to get at least one kill, or be able to refrag some damage that your teammate got. This is the power of a Frenzy plus armor, because you can tank that one headshot of the Ghost, and because of this, it's a really reliable combo. And if you want to just get a bare amount of value guaranteed, the Frenzy plus armor is extremely powerful for you to be rocking. Now we're going to be moving on to the C tier, which are weapons that are still good in the right hands, but they either need specific scenarios to work or a large amount of skill to pull off. Now, the first weapon at the top of C tier is the Marshal, which is the weapon that used to be extremely high up, and it's not a bad weapon by any means, but the big problem that's happening currently in the meta, in ranked, in pro play, is that teams are forcing a lot more, and as such, even on that second round, if you bought the Marshal before, you could expect the enemies to save, right? And then a body shot just kills them one shot. You're almost guaranteed to get at least one kill with it, and the Marshal's just a better op, and then you can carry it over to that third round where it doesn't really matter if you lose, because you're still going to be able to buy better weapons or even an op in that fourth round. But now, if teammates are forcing Stingers and they have armor, you body shot them, they rush you down, they kill you, the Marshal didn't get that much value. But yes, you can get headshots, and that's what I was talking about with high skill. If you can practice specifically hitting headshots with the Marshal, practice in free-for-all, practice against bots, whatever you have to do, and you can sometimes convert on some of these headshots up against even better weapons, up against armor, Stinger players, or whatever the case may be, then the Marshal might even be A tier for you. But you got to put the effort in to get the value out of, and I'm not going to suggest this weapon to anybody, because not just anyone can use this weapon and get value out of it. You got to specifically practice for it, but then the kills will come to you. Now, the next weapons in the C tier, I'm lumping them together, and it's the Ares and the Odin, which are weapons that are still good, and they're still good on certain scenarios, like playing on defense on Ascent with a Sova, or specifically playing double doors on Haven. But the thing is, these weapons are niche in their applicability. They're not useful everywhere. They're pretty much only useful in those scenarios, at least in pro play. And while yes, they're not absolutely terrible in a lot of different situations, they're pretty damn accurate, honestly, when you're crouching and aiming down the sight. they are not really worth their price point. I mean, an Ares that's lower in a 1v1 is just going to get bummed down by a Stinger or outranged by a better weapon, and an Odin is pretty expensive unless you're really getting a lot of value out of the wallbang. Not really worth that $3,200 price tag, but these weapons in the right scenarios can be powerful, but those scenarios aren't going to come up every single game and every single round on every single agent. Now, the next weapon that we got for you on the list in the C tier is the Guardian, which is a weapon that can get value if you got the aim, of course, and it's pretty much like a fat sheriff is the best way to describe a Guardian, but the Guardian is just poor against a lot of the best weapons in the game. I mean, getting swung on by a Phantom, don't have the flexibility of a Vandal, you're gonna lose close range fights to a Stinger. I mean, there's a lot of ways that the Guardian lacks, but there are some ways that it's really strong in the fact that its first shot accuracy is really high, and if you can set up these really long engagements, you can win them a lot of times as long as you have the reaction time to punish an enemy that swings out on an angle and you have appropriate crosshair placement. This weapon is not bad by any means, it's just in a really awkward spot and doesn't really see that much play because of it. But definitely let me know what you think about the Guardian in the comments down below, and if there was any changes that you would add to the Guardian, what would they be? I'm interested to know it. Now, moving on to the last weapon in that C tier, it's the Bucky, which is actually not that bad of a weapon. I mean, really, the Bucky is powerful, but it's a little bit strange to set up appropriately. There's this weird middle ground where your alternate fire won't one-shot and your primary fire won't one-shot, and if enemies ever end up in that little sweet spot, your Bucky seems really awkward. On top of that, because of the time to kill, you usually need to either push up really close and make sure you kill them in one shot, or be far enough away to fish for that one-shot kill with the alternate fire, but it doesn't feel that consistent. Honestly, as far as consistency is concerned, just pay the extra $100 and get that Stinger for the guaranteed value rather than the Bucky, because a lot of times the Bucky isn't going to be that reliable. But if you can abuse the fact that you're accurate while in air on something like a jet, the Bucky can still be incredibly powerful for you and can let you clutch up a couple of rounds. But the last weapon we got to talk about is the F tier, and the F tier, it's none other than the right click on the knife, which feels like it just doesn't hit anything. I mean, does it actually exist? Have you actually seen a right-click knife kill? Because I haven't, but if you have, definitely let us know in the comments down below, or hop over to the Discord and drop a clip. But go to the Game Leap website right now if you want to master any of these guides, or have in-depth map guides, agent guides, rating courses. I mean, we got it all on the website, so do yourself a favor, go check it out in the links down below. But thanks so much for coming by. That's all I got for you today. I'm Coach Mills, and of course, until next time.